If you've ever wondered why a certain diet or workout works for somebody else but isn't working for you, then this video is for you. In this upcoming video, I'm going to be talking about the 3 fitness and nutrition body types and how you can find out what yours is and then customize your workouts and your eating to suit your body type. This video that you're going to be watching is from a challenge that I did a little while ago. I am Kobe, by the way, a fitness and nutrition coach for women, particularly women in their 40s and beyond. So I talk a lot about hormones and how to work with your body as it's changing through perimenopause and after menopause. In this video, it is specifically to do with body types, and I find this information so empowering because I spent much of my life prior to my 46 years, so in my 20s and my 30s, working with the different diets out there, the different workouts out there, and they didn't always feel successful. They didn't always work for me, and I just assumed it was because I was doing something wrong or I wasn't doing it right or it just didn't work. But it was a lot of the time to do with my specific body type, and not every diet out there, not every workout out there is suited to every body type. And so this video is going to help to highlight the reasons why, then how you can find out what yours is and how to work with your body, what foods are going to work better, which workouts are going to work better for you. And it's a really empowering way to find out how to work with your body. So stay tuned, it's coming up next. Today, what we're going to cover is the 3 body types and how to determine yours. We'll do a little quiz so you can determine what yours is. The optimal exercise, as well as the most effective nutrition for each particular type. So we'll go through what yours is. It could very well be a combo type. A lot of us, actually most of us, are a combo type, but we tend to be more dominant in one or the other. So we'll learn about that as well. So just a quick overview of what these body types are. They're called the three somatotypes. So there was a doctor in the 40s who introduced these body types, the concept of these body types. And since then, nutritionists, exercise physiologists, and even doctors have used these types to design effective and individualized fitness plans for people. People are born with an inherent body type based on our skeletal frame and our body composition. The 3 types are called Ectomorph, Endomorph, and Mesomorph. Has anybody ever heard of those before? Has anybody ever kind of heard those words said before? You can tell me in the chat yes or no if you've ever heard those words kind of before, or if you might even know what yours is or what you think yours is. All right, so Lisa's heard and Brianna's never heard. So let's go, before we actually dive into determining what yours is and going into them, it's so very important to me and my heart and soul that you know that no type is better or worse than any other type. I know as women, and I've definitely fallen into this category numerous times throughout my life, that you wish you were something else or you fight against your body because it's not doing what you want it to. And truly, it is a journey, but truly, once we honor ourselves and recognize how to work with ourselves, we can really appreciate ourselves and our bodies a whole lot more. So every type has its own specific characteristics, some that are seen as pros and some that are seen as cons, but what's most important is that we know how to speak to our body in the best way to work with it rather than fighting against it. So that, I really wanted to make sure that was known first, is that number one important thing to me as a fitness and nutrition coach is that I know it sounds cliche, but that we love ourselves, because that truly is very important to me. So let's go through a little quiz to help determine what your body type is. For a precise assessment, like super precise, we can go and get our body fat, bone, and muscle mass measured in a lab to determine if you're ectomorph, mesomorph, endomorph, or combination type. But to get a pretty accurate idea of what we are, we'll just go through a little short quiz for now. So if you do have maybe the notes app in your phone open, or if you have a pen and paper handy, we're going to go through a few different questions, and you can I will give you some A, B, or C options, and then if you just want to jot down what those A, B, or C options are, it will help to determine later on. All right, so I'll give you a second to grab what you might need. If you're watching the replay, you can hit pause. Okay, so when you think about your bone structure here, your shoulders to your hips, what do you find is the ratio your shoulders compared to your hips? So A, your shoulders are more narrow than your hips. B, they're about the same. C, your shoulders are wider than your hips. So if you just write down for question number one, actually it doesn't even matter, just write down an A, a B, or a C, because at the end we'll just say which one, we'll just kind of calculate which one you have more of. So A, your shoulders are narrower than your hips. B, they're about the same as your hips. C, your shoulders are wider than your hips. Okay, question number two. When you encircle one wrist with your other hand's middle finger and thumb, what happens? So when you take your middle finger and thumb, if you can see me, and you encircle your wrist, if your middle finger and your thumb overlap a little bit, that's A. If your middle finger and thumb touch, but just barely, that's B. And if there's a gap between your middle finger and your thumb, that's C. So overlap is A, just touch is B, and gap is C. Okay, which of the following is true? A, I have trouble gaining muscle or fat. B, I can gain and lose without too much difficulty. C, I can gain but have a hard time losing. And this is to fat or muscle. So if you have an easy time gaining weight, but losing it is hard, or that means muscle or fat, that's C. If you can gain it and lose it pretty easily, both gain and lose, that's B. And if you have trouble gaining or losing muscle or fat, that's A. Okay, think about your childhood body type. So before you actually went into puberty. A, you looked pretty long and lanky. B, you were strong and compact. C, you were softer and full-bodied. Maybe you had those cheeks that people pinch and are like, oh, you're so cute. That's just what I pictured. I don't know. Sometimes, little kids have those cheeks that you just can't help. You just can't help it. Super annoying, I'm sure. Super annoying. Okay. If you were to exercise regularly, but then you take a break, your diet stays the same though. So this is just for exercising purposes. If you were to work out regularly and then you take a break, but your diet stays the same, would you lose muscle and strength quickly? That's A. Your body wouldn't change very much. That's B. C, your body would soften up quite quickly and you might even gain weight. So A, you would lose muscle and strength quickly. B, it wouldn't change all that much. And C, you would soften up and gain weight fairly quickly. Okay, now let's talk about nutrition for a moment. If you were to imagine having a big meal of pizza or a big bowl of pasta, like mac and cheese or something, how would you feel afterwards? You'd feel about the same, pretty normal, that's A. B, you'd feel generally good, but you might notice that your belly was kind of hard and felt pretty full. Or C, you would feel tired and bloated for a few hours afterward. So A, you'd feel pretty much the same. B, your belly would feel hard, but you'd feel okay. C, you would feel very tired and bloated afterwards. Okay, and the last one. How would you describe your body's bone structure? A, you have a small frame. B, you have a medium frame. C, you have a relatively large frame. So we're just thinking about bone structure here. We're not thinking about extra weight you might have on yourself, just the bone structure. Okay, so now I want you to add up all the A's, B's, and C's that you have. And then once they're all added up, you can let me know with a thumbs up in the chat box, and I can let you know what's the A's and the B's and the C's. So most likely you'll have a bit of each letter, because I would say every single body type actually is a mixture. There tends to be a dominant type, but there can be combo types. So you might find that two of the letters are similar. Okay. All right, I got the thumbs ups. All right, so if you had mostly A's, you're an ectomorph. If you had mostly B's, you're a mesomorph. Mostly C's, you're an endomorph. So if you want to write that word down, especially if it's a new word to you, because when we go through the slides later on, it'll be helpful to remember what your type is so that you can see which information applies to you later on. So mostly A's, ectomorph, mostly B's, mesomorph, mostly C's, endomorph. If you did notice that you had a combo type, I do have a combo type slide in here, but if you did notice that you have a kind of an even amount of A's and B's, or B's and C's, or A's and C's, then likely you have a combo type, which is easy enough to work with later on. So just kind of notice when we go through the slides later, what sort of applies, what you notice that you feel as we go through the different criteria here. So the A's, an ectomorph is a naturally thin, often tall person who struggles to gain. And when I say struggles to gain, I mean struggles to gain muscle and fat. They have narrow clavicles and hips, smaller joints, and a fast metabolism. A mesomorph has a medium and compact build, small joints like wrists and ankles, wider shoulders and hips than waist. So more like how we used to hear people say the hourglass, sort of wider in the shoulders, wider in the hips, and narrower in the waist, and is naturally more muscular. An endomorph is a naturally broad with wider bone structure, so wider waist and larger hips. Gaining comes easily, so gaining muscle and fat comes easily, and metabolism is slower. So this is that combo type slide I was referring to. So a combination type is a combo of 2 or 3 different types. The majority of us are a combination of some sort, with one of them being more dominant. But if you had some number or some letters that were similar, you might have one of these 2 very common combo types. So an ecto-endomorph or an endo-ectomorph. The ectomorph endomorph is more of a pear shape, so it's more ectomorph on the top and endomorph on the bottom. And then the apple shape is more stores fat more in the midsection and is thin in the lower body. So if you notice that when you do gain weight, if you gain it more in the middle than say in your bottom, then you likely are an endo-ectomorph combo. All right, so let's go through the optimal exercise for each type. An ectomorph has, like we learned before, has a difficult time gaining weight and gaining muscle because the metabolism is quite quick. So excessive cardio can actually diminish any sort of building efforts, any strength efforts that this type would want to do. So the idea is to focus on strength training here. Daily movement is really good. And if a ectomorph was to do any sort of HIIT or excessive cardio, 2 times a week would be max. Otherwise it would detract from the strength training that type was doing. It's important for an ectomorph to lift heavy as well. Daily movement would be more like walking or yoga or something more, even gentle cycling, so maybe some swimming, something that was a bit more gentle, so that the body is still moving as a body is meant to do, but it's not working harder in terms of heart rate and lungs, because that's when that metabolism that already is working quite quickly is going to kick into even higher gear. A mesomorph, that was the mostly bees. So mesomorph responds quickly to exercise, 2 to 5 days a week strength training, make sure we lift heavy, high intensity cardio 1 to 3 times a week, plus daily movement. You'll find that that throughout the 3 types, there's going to be some common threads that go between them. More susceptible to fitness plateaus, this type, so variety is key. An endomorph, that was the C's. Move as much as possible because metabolism is slower. So moving as much as possible will help to boost that metabolism. And it's important here when we are an endomorph looking to lose weight that the mindset shifts from weight loss into metabolism boost. And daily movement, moving in general, will really help with that. So daily movement like walking, yoga, and mobility exercises, high or low intensity cardio, and 2 to 5 times a week is optimal. Strength training 2 to 5 times a week. So those can be combination workouts. So they can be like a cardio session with a strength training session. Ultimately, it's the daily movement. It's the continuous moving as much as possible for the endomorph type. Now we'll go through eating and macronutrient breakdown. So what we learned on Wednesday is what the macronutrients are, what their purpose is, what each one's purpose is in the body. So if you haven't had a chance to see that yet, go ahead and watch that. It's a really good kind of foundation to build before we go into this part. It gives us a lot more background information on it, but this is how we are going to tweak that macronutrient information that we learned on Wednesday for each body type here. So an ectomorph, because their metabolism is so quick, can easily digest and use carbs for energy. So in that question we had in the quiz, where after you eat a heavy sort of pizza or pasta meal, if you really don't feel any different, that's because an ectomorph body type can use and digest carbohydrates quite easily. So it's important for that body type to eat more carbohydrates for their workouts because they're constantly burning carbs as the day goes on. So avoid refined carbohydrates. Those are those simple carbs that we learned about in workshop number 1, and focus more on the complex ones instead. So that's the vegetables and the whole grains and legumes. Ectomorph might need to eat more regularly, like every 2 or 3 hours, because the metabolism is so quick. And it's important, this is something you'll see probably throughout each one, is eat fat to burn fat. So that, as we learned in our first workshop, is a secondary source of energy after the carbohydrates are used up. So if an ectomorph is looking to lose stored body fat, then it's important to eat fat to train the body to use fat as energy as well. So this is just kind of like a little pie chart. It's a good starting point for the ectomorph because the metabolism is high and because carbohydrates are used so readily. It's as you can see, quite a high carb ratio. And those carbohydrates that we were referring to in the slide before this one are those complex carbs. So those whole grains, legumes, and vegetables. Vegetables aren't necessarily energy per se because they're quite low calorie. Calorie and energy are words that you can use interchangeably. So the legumes and the whole grains would be where the carbohydrate energy would come from for the ectomorph. And then about 25% protein and 20% fat. The mesomorph moderately utilizes carbs, which is that question in the quiz. The B was, I feel pretty much the same, but maybe a little full. So they don't use carbohydrates as readily as ectomorphs do, but they still are able to utilize carbohydrates. And does best with a pretty evenly mixed, and you'll see in the pie graph in the next slide, that it's a pretty evenly mixed ratio of carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Use carbohydrates for fuel, especially at workouts, and that's the complex carbs again. Eating fat to burn fat is key. There it is again. And there's the pie graph for the mesomorph. So as you can see, the carb ratio went down, so from 55 to 40, and the protein went up a little bit and the fat went up a little bit. But it's a pretty even sort of pie graph here. And the endomorph, that was the especially and when we were talking about that pizza and pasta meal, if you feel super slow and sluggish and even sick after eating something like that, it's because of the low tolerance or use for these type of carbohydrates, especially the refined carbs, which are the simple carbohydrates that we learned about in workshop 1. So the focus here is on vegetables and complex carbohydrates like a whole grain before any exercise. And there it is again, eat fat to lose fat. That's that training the body to use fat as a secondary source of energy. And as you can see in this one, fat is the main portion because that's where the energy is going to come from for the endomorph, and the carbohydrates is much lower and the protein is up there too. So if you're an endomorph body, a keto diet might actually feel good. So if you are an endomorph and you've ever tried that before and it's worked for you, that's probably why. If you're an ecto or a mesomorph and you've tried keto, that's probably why it didn't feel awesome. But that's essentially because, I mean, there is a little bit of carbs in here, and I know a keto diet doesn't actually want too many carbs, but that could be why it felt good. That fat is the main source of energy here on that one. So we kind of went over this in our workshop number 1, but I wanted to real quick go over what some different options are for each of the macronutrients. So the pie chart that we saw was the green section was the protein section. So some really quick, I'm sure you know what some protein options are, but sometimes it's nice to have them front and center here. So on the left side, you'll see the animal sources of protein, and then on the right side, you'll see the veggie sources. It's important to note that the veggie sources of protein are incomplete on their own, so they don't have all of the essential acids that a full source of protein would have. So if you combine them with a grain, then they also are a complete protein. Recognizing that lentils and grains are also carbohydrates too. So that's something to note when you're using them as your protein source. And then the fat options are pretty much any fat that you're going to see growing somewhere or that has grown somewhere. So nuts and seeds, and any of those nuts and seeds can be turned into oil as well. Of course, animal sources of protein also have fat in them, so it's important to recognize that as well. Some carbohydrates have natural fat sources in them too, but these are some good and healthy fat options. So if you are an endomorph and you're that large pie chart section with the fats, these are good sources of fat for you to have. We learned about this in workshop number 1, but I will mention quickly that fats are susceptible to light, heat, and air, so it's important to keep them in cool places and in the dark. So if it's an oil, that's why it's in a dark glass container. I put my nuts and seeds always in the fridge too to keep them cool. If they go off, you kind of notice it when you smell it, but it doesn't necessarily make us sick, but it can cause inflammation in the body. So, which is a stressor on the body. So it's important to keep them in good shape. Oh, another important thing to note, which we also talked about in workshop 1 too, is that fats are higher in energy. So they're more energy dense, meaning that they have more calories per gram. So you don't necessarily need as much because you get a good bang for your buck in smaller doses. Even if you're looking at the higher percentage for endomorph, that's a percentage that we use there. So that percentage is actually taken up a little easier because, or a little quicker, because they are energy dense. And then last but not least, we've got the carbohydrate option. So I have these in 2 sections as well. The one on the right is all the vegetables. I mean, of course, there's more vegetables than that. I only had so much space on here, but these are some vegetable options. And as you saw when we went through the slides, all types benefit from a variety of vegetables in all different colors. And something I mentioned in workshop 1 too that I also believe wholeheartedly is that I don't want you to force feed yourself anything that you hate eating. There are so many different options of foods out there, and you don't have to eat the ones that you hate. If you don't like broccoli, there's other green vegetables you can have. So it is okay. If you don't like something, don't force feed yourself. However, I will say that just because you didn't like something 5 years ago doesn't necessarily mean that you won't like it now, because our taste buds do change. So yeah, like I said, on the right side is all the veggies. So Veggies are a good way to bulk up the system, to make us feel full, to signal leptin to the brain to let our body know that it's full without having excess amounts of energy. So I always say that put 50% of your plate to be vegetables, no matter what type you are. And then on the left-hand side, we see the energy-giving carbohydrates, hence that little picture at the bottom. So all of our complex carbs and our fruits are the ones that give us more immediate energy. The complex carbs give us energy within the first 2 hours, but it's more of a sustained energy because they're a whole grain, or they are a more energy dense vegetable like potatoes and yams, beets, pumpkin and squash, that kind of thing. And then there's the whole grains like quinoa, brown rice, and oats. And then our fruits are, in fact, simple carbohydrates, but because they are fruits, they also include the fiber that the vegetables do. They have more energy in them because they have their natural sugars. So it really depends on your type. And you might kind of notice that as you eat different fruits, depending on your body type, like if you're an endomorph, for example, that some fruits actually feel better in your system than other ones do. So it's a good opportunity, no matter what type you are, that as you experiment with different foods and eating different ratios of foods for your body type, to recognize what actually feels good and what doesn't. Just because Kobe said that this this is the way it works doesn't mean it's hard and fast. We got to recognize our body, honor it, and really listen to it along the way. It's a great starting point, but there are absolutely tweaks and things you can make along the way depending on your specific type, especially if you're a combo type. All right, so that was pretty short and sweet. However, I would like to open up the floor for questions now. If anybody has any questions, I would love to hear them. You can either unmute yourself or you can put them in the chat. It is entirely up to what you're comfortable with. So let me know if you got questions. Does anybody want to share what their type is?
I have a question. If you are like a combo type,
Yeah.
and you're trying to like make your plate, is that just kind of where the experimenting comes in? So like if you're like an endo-ecto and they're kind of different. So are you just kind of making a plate and hoping for the best?
Yeah, good call. They are different because they're pretty much on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Hey, that's probably why you're like, this doesn't make sense. So I think when it comes to nutrition specifically, like you said, when you're creating your plate, I think you either have recognized already or you will recognize what feels the best in your body. So when you answered that question about eating either like pizza or pasta, how do you feel after you eat that?
Like pretty heavy and tired.
Yeah. Okay. So then I would say gear your nutrition more towards the endo side of things. So start there with that pie graph and see how that goes for you, especially if the high carbs, like the 55% especially, feels really heavy and nasty. I would go towards the endo nutrition part of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks. You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it, Lisa. Excellent. I find this stuff so fascinating when it comes to working with our body. I just find it so fascinating and so enlightening. I spent so many years fighting against my body, not recognizing I was fighting against it necessarily, but trying to do all these different things I was supposed to do. And then when I learned about how the body actually works and then that there are different types, it was almost like enlightening but empowering as well. So I hope you found that helpful and empowering and enlightening. If you have any comments or any questions, please put them in the comment section below. If you have any takeaways, if there were any aha moments for you, then please put them in the comments below. I would love to hear what they are. Any questions, I am happy to answer them as best I can. You can put them in the comments below. If you're looking for ways to get started on your fitness and nutrition journey, check out the freebies that I have in the description of the video. And I will see you again soon. Bye for now.